Hey, and welcome to another video. This one is just going to be a quick unedited video about the installation of the OR-FAB Jeep tire carrier. So I just got done with the initial installation, and there's a bunch of pointers that I want to just capture on video while I'm watching it. So basically you got this hook assembly right here. You hook it in like that, unlatch it, whole unit opens up, and then there's two lip edges right here and there that'll carry jerry cans. Unfortunately, my jerry cans are not the right type. You need the type that have a lip edge on the bottom to be able to fit into that surface right there. So if you have this type of jerry can right here, that's not a winner. So anyways, there is a lot to know about the install on this, and I would say that there's a lot of forums and videos about this that say it's a hard installation. That's very true. I got mine from Extreme Terrain, and it came quick. It was no issues there. But the thing to know about it is it doesn't come with instructions. So I found these instructions right here, which I got off of the internet, and I'll post a link to where I got them at, and I also posted them to the Wrangler TJ forum as well. So they're in two spots now. I don't know if they were in other spots before, but this set of instructions I think is from the original factory run. Now, a little bit of history here. This particular tire carrier is from a company called OR-FAB, and OR-FAB is no longer in business. They got bought by a company I think it's called DVA. I don't know that for certain, but that's what I read on some of the forums. The problem is that the instructions don't come with the units. That's the first thing to know. And it comes packaged in a rather large box. And I think that there's a video from Redneck Junkyard, Redneck Garage, I think, where he actually shows what it looks like when it comes in. They put everything in there, wrap it in plastic, and they spray foam it. So there's a little bit of leftover spray foam there, and it makes a little mess getting it unboxed. But it's not a big deal. You can handle it. But once you get it out, no instructions, so you're gonna need to make sure you download the instructions before you start the job. A couple other things to note here. During the installation, this thing was installed backwards. They had this sticking out on this side, so when you first got it, you thought that this was the part that hooks on there, and I was trying to figure it out. I couldn't figure it out, and I think I'd seen some people talking about something being messed up on it and posting where you can buy this kind of thing to mount on there. All I did with mine was unscrew it, turn that around, and screw it back in on this side, and then it works just fine. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that in the instructions that I got, not all of the hardware came with it that's shown in the instructions. So there is a bracket that goes right here, and that did not come with this unit. So I don't know if they decided that it did not need to be used anymore with the, I guess you can call this a second generation since it's a second company making it, based on what I understand of the history here. But so it didn't come with that. Now the next thing to look at here is the spacing on the tailgate. Everything, all of the factory holes lined up perfectly, and so the bracket was just right. But after I got it installed, and the way this works, just a little FYI, there's a spacer here because you're adding space here. After I got it installed, the spacing at this gap versus that gap is different. Now it works. I think I need to do just a little bit more adjustment on it, but it latches, it opens, it closes, everything does what it's supposed to do, but the spacing's a little off. Now I don't think it's a weather tight issue because the weather seal still seems to be making contact right there and all the way down, but what it is an issue right here, in that these and this bracket don't make contact anymore. Now the way that thing works, when I close the door, I don't know if this is going to show up on video, but there's a space between them and they should be in contact, and that is the wiring harness that goes up to your third brake light. So I got to get that wired in. But what I'm going to do to fix that on mine is I'm going to take this bracket off, and I'm going to drill new holes that are over whatever the distance is from here to, from here to there, and that should solve that problem once I do that. Now another thing, it says in the instructions that, let me close this up and latch it. It says in the instructions that that you might need to cut this bolt off, and I did. So I had to cut that bolt off in order to get this on. So if you're doing an install yourself, don't put this on until you get everything else set up. You can do this at the end of the project, because you do need to, in my case, I had to cut that because it was a good ½ inch left. So that was one issue. Now the next issue is, this just might be the unit that I got. There's 3 screws that come from the factory that hold this in. They're not long enough once you get this installed because of this spacer bracket. So what you need to do is go get some, either, well, it says it comes with the screws in the kit, but it didn't actually come with the screws. What you need to do is go to the hardware store and get some screws that are long enough to go through, and probably bolts too to go with it on the back side. I tried to reuse the factory holes, and the problem was they stripped out when I got what I thought was the right bolts. I stripped them out. So this is on with the screws that I got. It's a little loose. It's going to hold up till next weekend when I can go get the right screws and properly replace it. So that's one thing. Now another thing to note here is down here you've got these 2 bolt holes, and luckily just about every time I drilled a hole I went ahead and I checked to see what was behind there. Now this is, I'm going to go to the instructions now. I'm going to show you what's going on here. So find the instructions, and looking for it. It's a little farther along. Yeah, I think we're getting close here. Yes, okay, so in the instructions it talks about putting this plate back behind that, where those 2 bolt holes were that I just showed. Now that plate is right over here. I didn't even bother opening the plate up. There's the plate that goes there. The problem is I don't know what type of Jeep they were working on or what vintage this was. Mine is a 2001, and you can see that plate right there, and you can see that it's, if you look, there's a plate. Maybe you might have to download the instructions yourself, but there's a plate right here that's up against the body wall. But when I go to my Jeep, and hopefully there's enough light to show this, here we are right here. Here is the holes I was just talking about. And when I look up underneath, there is solid wall. It's about 2.5, 3 inches thick. And there's the inner wall. So the instructions in the bracket that's designed to work with this thing actually mounts directly against the outer wall, but I have this whole assembly right there. So this is a 2001. I don't know, no clue what vintage of years have that type of assembly underneath, but I was not able to use these bottom 2 bolts right there. Not terribly concerned about it, but it's just something to be aware of. Now, to get the entire thing in, you put all the bolts in, you put all the brackets in, put everything together, and then you don't tighten it as you go. And then at the very end, you tighten everything down. So in my case, and I think the instructions say, you tighten the driver's side brackets first, and I did that. And then when you have this, you'll see mine drops just a little bit right now. And I'm wondering if that's because I'm missing some parts, or if that's just I didn't do a very good installation. But what I did to get mine was, when I first had it down there, it was down easily, like right there. So I got on the front of my Jeep, I went over here, I've got my hijack. So I took my hijack and I went and used it over here. And I would recommend being very careful because those hijacks are very dangerous. But I basically lifted this whole thing up to where it was sitting about above that surface there with the tire on it. And then once I did that, then I went over and I started tightening all of the bolts that are all over this unit. So it's not a bad deal once you've got it all, got everything jacked up over here, and then you start tightening it in. You can do it by yourself, but it's definitely easier if you got a buddy to help you. Now another thing, the install itself is a little tedious and time consuming, but the real problem that I have is this is 2019. This is a 2001 Jeep. All of the factory bolts were rust seized. So that one, the same 2 over on that side, and some of these ones. Now I managed to, I knew this was coming, and I kind of suspected that was going to be the case. So I used some WD-40 and penetrating oil, and just went over and hit all of the bolts in advance just got some oil up behind them, and let it sit for a couple of days before I did all the work. And actually, this is my daily driver, so I actually drove it around. But I every night I hit it knowing I was going to do this job. I did the same thing over here, and whoever had the Jeep previously, they did a whole bunch of like rhino type coating on the inside, whatever it is. So this was sealed. So these ones were stuck pretty good. Plus, it was rusted really good. And the real problem with this installation, in my mind, isn't so much how difficult all of this is. It's that fact that I had 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think 5 or 6 bolts all seize up, and I had to, in the case of these two are the worst, I had to drill down into the bolts, and I drilled on just a little bit of an angle so that I caught some of the threads so I could get some penetrating oil inside, and then I just hit them with a hammer a bunch of times, and then I sat there with an impact wrench, and the neighbors, I'm sure, hated me, but eventually it got done. So anyways, all in all, I'm excited to use this thing. Another thing I would probably change is, here's the lock mechanism. It's on the top of this bar. If I had designed this, I would have put this down below so that your padlock is hanging down below instead of laying on this guy. And I mean, it's going to probably make some noise and rattle either way, but it'd make a little less noise and a little less rattling if it was on the bottom side, but minor issue. Yeah, so another thing I did, you can figure out if you want to do this yourself, but every time I drilled a hole, I put rust inhibitor inside the hole right away. And if I could, I had time, I would go ahead and let it all dry out and put a little paint on it as well. So I tried to mitigate the potential future rust issues, but it seems very solid. It lines up pretty good right off the bat, and yeah. So I'm gonna, another thing, it didn't come with any kind of quick clamp or something. I'm probably gonna get like a D-ring or something that goes on there just to hold this thing from coming off, because that's definitely a concern. So there it is. As always, work hard, play hard, be a big softy when you get home. Thanks for watching. See you around.